hello, everyone. I'm Pat Lynch, and welcome to the Career Pathways Podcast. As always, I'm joined by our team. Say hello.
Gavin Brunson, hello.
And way in the back. Yep. So producer Jason's out there mounting the board, and as we say, making the magic happen. Today, our guest is Dr. Marcus Birkencraw, Assistant Professor of Data Science at Lyon College. And what we're going to talk about today is data science, AI, cyber security, yes, and all things in between. So, hello, Marcus.
Hello.
This is
good to be here.
Been very much looking forward to this.
Okay.
The first question, just a real broad one, is just tell us about yourself. Now, from your accent, I'm trying to pick where in Arkansas you are exactly from.
Yeah, it's not far from here.
You'll have to help me.
It's not very far from here.
Okay.
No. It's. I feel it's like 10 million miles away.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's nowhere near in Arkansas. Now, I'm originally from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from the southwest of Germany,
okay,
Catholic South, and I came here from Berlin. So the last 15 years before I came to Arkansas 2 years ago, I've spent in Berlin, in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my home country.
Ah,
even
okay.
though I've been around the world quite a bit.
But and kind of walk us through like your education, your professional background.
Okay, so I'm originally a theoretical particle physicist.
Mm-hmm.
So and I got distracted from physics because I'm one of the original developers of the World Wide Web. I was at CERN in Switzerland, and so I left physics and worked for a number of years in industry, worked for Accenture, which is a large strategy consulting firm, and then for Shell, Royal Dutch Shell. And lived in London, lived in Italy for a few years, studied in a bunch of places, lived in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
I led teams all over the globe. And at some point, we had a child.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in London at the time, and London has really crap playgrounds. It's really not a city set up for children, really.
Right.
That's why you never, in London films, you never see children. They're always on the countryside,
Right,
not in London. And so we thought we got to get away. And so we moved very far away. We moved to New Zealand.
mm-hmm.
So I had a guest professorship in New Zealand, and that gave me back the taste for teaching and learning. And then I became a professor in Germany, in Berlin, for business informatics, which
Mm-hmm.
is basically IT for business people, marketing,
Right.
Accounting, anything like that. Yeah. And so, and then at some point I decided I want to do something else and became a visiting professor here in Lyon
Mm-hmm.
College 2 years ago. Yeah.
And then
And now I live here. And
And
now
now
people
you-
ask me like, where are you from in Arkansas? And actually, I wish you could see me today because I'm playing the part today. I don't look like I normally look. I walked into my house at lunchtime, and my daughter said, "Oh, are you from around here?" And because I wear cowboy boots. Gavin can confirm. Is that true? He has cowboy
Yes.
boots and worn out jeans and a vest and a plaid shirt.
right.
So, I'm just stepping out of my pickup truck just to drop by here at the radio.
You had a trucker hat, and you
No.
got the whole ensemble.
No, but you probably, even without me opening my mouth, you would know I'm not from here.
Yeah. What?
But I do live here now.
Yeah.
So we have a house on Main Street in Batesville.
Yep.
And I live with 3 dogs, 2 cats,
Mm-hmm.
and my family.
You were at the beginning of the World Wide Web.
Yes.
You have to tell us about that. That just is
Okay, I really have
fascinating.
only a private story about that.
Well,
all
no,
the
that's-
other
but
stories
it-
are kind of
No.
okay. What happened is that I was a graduate student in physics.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my PhD. Was getting my PhD, and something. Yeah, I think I was still getting my PhD, and there was a need to get to sources that weren't available where I studied, which was in Hamburg at the time, which has a big particle accelerator like at CERN. And so scientists, physicists, which is a very old community, were already working together at the time, but they were trying to figure out better ways to share information, which wouldn't involve, I create something, I send it to you, you send it to Gavin, Gavin sends it to you, and so on, it goes around. Instead, everybody should hold on to their stuff, and all I share with you is a link. And so I'm still working on it, and you get the link. And that's the idea of the web.
Mm-hmm.
So, by engaging with that, I became part of a small community, the center of whom was Tim Berners-Lee, who actually can count as the inventor of the web, even though there were lots of other people involved. And after a little while, I was maintainer of the first virtual library, and I maintained a library of software in Stanford, and did all kinds of stuff all over the place without ever going there, because the proto-web, the first time the web was created, was just like that. It was really just a support infrastructure for scientists, primarily physicists. And then what happened is Mark Andreessen, you may know him by name. So I had a lot of
venture capitalist, but was it Netscape?
Exactly. He was the original. He was actually at a research center in Illinois, I think, and created the first browser.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when it all took off. So it's a little bit like if you made the most fascinating radio shows, but nobody knows about it, and suddenly somebody creates a line from here to everywhere, and so suddenly everybody hears these great radio shows, and that's where it took off.
Well, what was the vision of the World Wide Web back then versus how it became?
That's a great question, because also
kind of relevant, kind of like AI right now.
Yeah, it's kind of ChatGPT, where it was actually quite similar in the sense that the idea was to just give back to the world. Scientists were doing basically what they enjoyed doing. It's not really a slave trade, being a scientist, but you do what you like doing and get paid for it. Not very well, on the other hand. And so the idea was really to give something back and support the community at the same time. So the idea was always for this to be completely open, as it actually has turned out to be. I mean, the web is supported by governments, but it's pretty much of an open space. Now, the additional issue of free speech, that's sort of a superstructure on top of the web, but that's really like a little bit like, you give somebody a weapon, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to put it in a glass case on the wall, or are they going to use it to shoot someone? So it's a bit like that. And so it was meant to be an open thing, and that's what it's turned out to be, I think. I mean, what is not, I think, was anticipated is the fact that it turned into such an entertainment platform.
Right.
And that there were so many because of that, there were so many commercial interests that, however, haven't been able to really destroy it, but piggyback it in such a way that it's now often harder to find the actual content among all the crap. Which was created for entertainment. Now, there's also a lot of good entertainment stuff, of course, but so I don't think anybody anticipated it would take off as a what is it, as a substitute for all books and for any form of knowledge, which is what essentially it has become.
Knowledge, where the source where people get their news, and all of a sudden traditional news outlets, all of a sudden found that they were, that they got left to the side.
Yeah.
I mean, it just,
it has really disrupted. It's disrupted not just an industry, but our way of communicating and writing and actually ultimately thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we talk about, computational thinking and digital literacy and all that, the word literacy really has to do with, reading the book, and digital is because of that. So it's a bit like, the old Greek story, the Pandora box.
Mm-hmm.
So you could look at it that way.
Right.
Or you could look at it as an unfolding story whose end we don't know yet. I prefer the latter version because otherwise I would be quite guilty of having been implicated. I mean, not in any big way.
Right.
I mean, I'm not an inventor of anything. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and that was a good moment.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Gavin?
Well, to piggyback off your astonishing accolade, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 1994, you won the Best of the Web Award.
Yes, that's right. Actually, that was the private story that was going to tell. Because there was a first worldwide, my students actually from the classes know this. Maybe I already told it to you when I'm a little more lightheaded in class and I go and want to warm up people to my German personality. Germans are by nature humorless. So it's, you need these little anecdotes to get people to like you.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell this story about the first World Wide Web conference. So in 94, which was only like a few years after the actual inception of the web, there was this first conference. And I was one of the speakers there. And I won a couple of awards for the best campus-wide information system and 2 awards or something like that. Anyway, the story is that I was giving a talk. And in that talk, I sort of was talking about relationships on the web.
Mhm.
And I said, I have over 100 friends on the web, which at the time,
It was a lot.
that was a huge number. I mean, I don't know how many web servers there were at the time. So places where you could actually find web content, but I knew them all by heart and knew the numbers, the addresses, basically. So 100 was a lot. And actually, I was a nerd, so having 100 friends was a big thing too. I don't think I had any friends at the time.
Yeah.
So, and in the audience, there was a woman, and this was a conference also of nerds. There were like 700 people there, mostly computer scientists and physicists, and like 2 women. And one woman was in the audience, and when I said that, she laughed really nastily. And afterwards, she came up to me and said, "Are you crazy? I mean, those aren't real friends."
Yeah.
And so, and now I've been married for 30 years.
Oh, okay.
So I
I didn't
what's
see
the
that
word?
one
She
coming.
hitched her. No,
Yeah.
you didn't, did you? So yeah, that's how I met my wife, basically.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
So that's what I remember. That conference is the place where I met my wife, and not at the place where I won awards.
Yeah.
Understandably.
So is that like the first like Match or Tinder? That
No. Actually, I'm really not.
You can claim it. Yeah. That was,
No, because we met in real life, and
Oh,
it
okay.
took off in real life.
Yeah.
There was no. I didn't know her at all before, and I don't know. This morning, a couple of students, 3 students, gave a talk about AI,
Mhm.
about a chatbot for like EVBot, or for people who look for relationships.
Yes.
Which
Mm.
you can sort of abuse ChatGPT in that direction. Not very well, because it's
Yeah.
relatively
Well,
secure. It's not really a bot you can flirt with.
Right.
Mhm.
But I'm very critical of those attempts
yeah.
of finding. I think it's really worthwhile to still meet people and shake hands,
Yeah.
hug them.
It's overrated. Man.
I mean, what
you wanna do-
it brings me to the
Go ahead.
fact that
Yeah.
many when I go to the do's here, like Highland House and so, you
Right.
always run into couples, and if you dig and ask, where did you meet? It's usually Lyon College.
yeah,
They were both students at Lyon College. So
absolutely. Shift gears.
Yes.
Data science.
what's that?
We're going to
You
find
thought
out. That's our goal right now is to
Okay.
find that out and kind of. Can you define it and then also tell us how do you teach it?
Okay. Can you define it? Well, it's notoriously hard to define
Mm-hmm.
because it's an interdisciplinary topic. Sort of, you throw some. Do you know this Asterix and Obelix comic strip?
No.
It's a European comic, a French comic strip. Anyway, they're druids, and they always have a giant pot,
Mm-hmm.
and so they throw stuff in, and they pull some drink out of it that has superpowers.
Okay.
And data science, like if you throw into that big vessel, you throw a pot, you throw in some math, some statistics, you throw in some computing, and you throw in, and that's really the most important part, a lot of domain knowledge. So, for
Right.
example, you would throw in your marketing
Right.
knowledge, Pat.
Right.
What are you passionate about, Gavin?
Basketball, sports, we mean sports.
Basketball
Yeah.
information about, but you throw that in, that's your domain.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to, and then you could do data science. So the data, even though the word sounds like, it should be sort of above everything, is really hitched to
Mhm.
you're a good data scientist if you have actually domain knowledge and something you care about, I would say.
Right.
And so then data science, if you were to define it from that, is a way to unlock whatever is hidden in terms of patterns in the data.
Right.
Ideally, people say stories, and you can actually call it that, but they may not be stories you make novels with, but they're still interesting stories. At the beginning, it's
Right.
just a table full of numbers
Right.
and words, and at the end, people sit there, and like, wow, I didn't have any idea that this was behind the numbers, that this was going on, That's a typical data science response.
Because like I know, like I look back on my business career, and we would have these like mind-numbing Excel files, and it would have all this data.
They're still around,
and it would be how do you turn that into?
Yeah, it's
like there's data and then there's information.
Yeah,
and that was always what I was taught is, okay, now what's the story that's being told? As far as like with data science as taught here, then is it based around predictive modeling and data visualization?
Well, those are actually subfields or specializations in data science. I mean, what you said rings true as well, because another way to explain it, I mean, it's really like the kind of thing that you would explain in a different way to a different person.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, really, that's true for math as well.
Right.
I mean, if you talk to somebody who wants to know what math is, you do not talk to them like a mathematician who knows what's on the inside. You try to talk to them what's on the outside. What does mathematics kind of do for you?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? So for a business person, what data science can do for you is help you make better decisions. That's what it's ultimately about. So, but something like a decision is very, very high up in the air. It could be a complicated decision. It could be a really simple decision. Take weather. Right? Weather is largely based on data science, predictive data science. Right. But the decisions around it are fairly simple. Namely, what am I going to wear today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? But then when you talk about somebody to make decisions, I don't know, about what we just talked about, relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tinder, these algorithms, they match features that they recorded from many people and try to predict a match.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different one. Or take a third example. You may remember this was a data science talk, Dr. Pryor, a few weeks ago, coming here from the University of Arkansas. Yeah, and he was doing cancer research, but he's essentially a data scientist who is interested in supporting life or death decisions, namely these X-rays, these pictures, do they spell cancer or not? Yeah? And should we start with diagnosis? Should we start with treatment or not? Yeah. So these are, but it's still all the same data science. But from the examples, you may already infer, and that was your other question, namely how do you teach it? What do you have to teach? And data visualization would be a course in the program that is specifically suited for people who want to use data to visualize or to visualize their data. Right. Now, that could be a basketball player who's interested in looking at statistics from different games and finding out, who's on top, what's the consistent playing over many games.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are in the room and you know these people, you can say that yourself. But if all you have is that the tables of their data, you may want to see that as a curve.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see actually who's on top. That's the highest curve. That's a visualization.
Right.
So, but the general teaching here, the data science program we have, is aligned with what we call the pipeline, which is at the beginning. There are the raw data, like the playing in the basketball, the actual sales data in business, or what was my other example? The X-rays, the medical images. And at the very end is the visualization and the storytelling. And in between, you have a bunch of different steps. In the program, we have to unfortunately cover them all. So the next step after having the data is to make the data clean, to make them tidy, or clean them up to the point that you can actually look at them and work with them. So that's what we called data engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move into modeling, which is where you think about what algorithms are useful. How can I transform the data? For example, for the more mathematically minded ones, if I have exponential data, what happens if I take the logarithm? Then exponential data become linear data as a result. That's a transformation. So in that bit is where you have more mathematical skills. You need that. And then you move on into data visualization and finally data storytelling, where you meet with the customers of your data science project. But it's really a whole pipeline, which is, I'm sure, the same in marketing and in all areas, that you begin with something raw and you end up with something refined.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to learn how to get from the raw to the refined.
Yeah, and with visualization, I always see it as just how to do that. It's almost like final presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually more. There's the exploration. Okay. I missed that out in the middle.
Yes.
Like before you model, you explore the data. So you look at data like tabular data, just like Jason looks at the audio files, and you see a pattern somewhere. The volume is too high. and that's already a visualization because you already see the curve. But all you have is the numbers. You want to first make a quick plot. That's not suited for a final presentation. So there is visualization at the very end, which thinks about the colors. For example, if you have, any form of impairment, color impairment or so, you need to think about that.
Right.
If you have people who, are used to a particular type of or style of data of visualization, you need to serve their visual needs. Yeah. So, so there's visualization comes in play all throughout. Yeah, really.
Now, go ahead.
Hey, you're on the off. There's a stranger walking in.
Yeah.
No, I was going to ask. So when people talk about data when it comes to Facebook selling data, Google selling
yes,
data, is that considered the same type of data that you is that like a subcategory?
No, that's a good point. No, I mentioned the word earlier. The data that are sold on are typically raw data, and what Facebook or others, pretty much any environment where you move around and you leave a digital trace, what they measure is particular features. And so some of the features are private, some are not so much. It's a bit like if a person walks through a room with boots on and, you actually see the footprints. Are they dirty? Are they big? Are they small? Is he wearing gum boots? Is he wearing leather shoes? Stuff like that. And those features are obviously recorded by Facebook, by TV, but pretty much by the phone companies, by the providers. That's the kind of data we're talking about. So they are raw and they don't unlock themselves. So you could actually say that, without quite sophisticated data science, those data are as useless as, looking from 1,000 feet at Batesville and seeing everything that happens. So a lot of stuff happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But until you get on the ground and you actually work and analyze the data, you won't have anything to tell. Still, there are enough people who can do that. And therefore, Facebook and other companies are under duress to protect them. And if they don't do it, they're bad.
So to sort of piggyback off what he said,
so I'm talking too much, aren't I?
No, please. You're the
I'm a
guest.
professor.
You are the guest. Yes.
So like with would data science also be incorporated with like algorithms, like with TikTok and Instagram and Facebook?
very
how
much. Yeah.
they like say I click on a video and I like it, and then I see more of the same video
That's right.
or more of the same. Is that the same
absolutely.
concept?
Absolutely
Okay.
right.
Nice.
And that's a form of kind of the simpler form of predictive algorithm, which counts as supervised learning, where the algorithms are able, based on the feature of your usage features and other users' features who are similar, is able to predict the next thing you might want to hear, the next track you might want to hear, the style you want, the genre you want to hear, the singer you want to hear, and so on. So yeah, those are. And then, from what I understand, I had this presentation about TikTok not too long ago, and I don't use it myself, of course. Is that they are quite far ahead of the game in terms of using that to make the platform more addictive. Yeah, so that's what I understand. But on the other hand, most of the users are younger, so maybe it's easier to make them addicted. I don't know. Yeah. Jason says nods. Yeah, he's like, he knows all about that. Yes.
Right.
I was going to ask, should it be regulated, like the amount of data?
It is regulated. In fact, in America, less than in Europe. In Europe, we have a whole legislative act. I think it's called GPRS. I'm not quite sure that's the abbreviation. GDPR, thank you. And which caused a lot of headache. You know that.
Yeah.
Pat knows that for companies, because it's quite well thought out and puts the companies under a lot of stress to not just use the data and do whatever they want with it, but actually protect them and or put differently, be liable when it comes to it. Now that's kind of interesting because in Europe, kind of anything goes, but we have the better laws in the U, and there's not much litigation. But in the US, you don't have the laws, but you have a lot of litigation. So it's kind of out of sync. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and Europe's always been ahead on regulatory front, acting more so where we're just commerce focused. So so we get what we get. A student having a data science major, what courses would they
have to
be
take.
taking? Yes.
Well, for most of our listeners who are liberal arts students, what is actually in immediate reach and should be in reach is a data science minor,
Okay.
which is sort of like an additional, sort of an additional skill that is much sought after, that enables you to make more sense of the data you work with as a historian,
Right.
as a psychologist, as a sociologist, as a biologist. Even though all these disciplines, of course, have their own statistics and statisticians. But the data science major, which sort of enables you to put that degree title on your behind your next to your name, involves some core data science courses which I teach. It involves a bunch of different programming languages, because knowing different languages is an additional skill and is important. The area data science changes a lot, as you probably know, because ChatGPT and AI is part of the data science field. And so it's really an area where nobody really knows what kind of skill is the hottest even in 2 years' time. Make that 1 year. Nobody knows what the hottest skill. However, most of the companies and agencies have sort of baseline skills, which are not attached to AI. They're attached to the data they have collected and the people they look after and the products they have produced for many years. So what we need is the ability to analyze, data analysts. So there's 2 core courses in data science, which you can just do on your own. There is a course on databases, which is really important because most of the data in the world must be stored in some shape or form. In that course, you learn through the language SQL, structured query language, how to query those data. What else is in it? There is a course on data structures, because if you have a data science question, how you formulate the question in a way for the machine is kind of critical. If you formulate the question in the wrong way, the machine can work for 1,000 years and not get an answer. If you hit on the right way, and that's the technical term for that is data structure, it can do it very quickly. And then the next bit, one level higher, is algorithms, which Gavin mentioned earlier, where you learn different algorithms for machines. And then there are a few math classes. So it's Calculus 1, which you have in most of the science. It's Calculus 2, but those 2 are like inverse of one another. One is differentiation, the other one is integration. And then you can pick a course that is a math deepening that you like to do. For example, could be statistics, which is the most relevant one probably in data science. Know things about average, distribution, stuff like that, and or linear algebra or numerical analysis. You have a choice. So there's I would say a little more math in it than in computer science, but way less math than in math. And the math that is in there, as well as the programming, is all focused on your domain knowledge again. So what I'd like to attract is people from business, from marketing, from psychology, from journalism, because there's for example, with the books, one of the textbooks I use for the database course on SQL which is called Practical SQL. It's written by a journalist who found out that he has a real edge as a journalist if he knows something about databases. And so there is the field is only under this name only about 10, 12 years old. So that's an extremely young field. That's a little bit like, like genetics in 1965. The DNA was only discovered in 1957 or something. So it's a very young field, which is why I like it, because I'm so young.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Don't snicker here.
So Lion students that graduate with the data science major minor, what career opportunities are there for them?
So where do our students go, or where can they go? Well, there's I have on the data science page, on the academic page, if somebody wants to see it, I have a page which I try to update with our recent graduates, but really pretty much anywhere. Based on what I said, there is no business, no agency that doesn't have a need for data analysis. There are some obviously hotter areas like marketing, sales always needs that. Finance always needs it. And then there's particular flavors of data science that are suited for those businesses. But even in the mean, because our classes are so small, I almost can with your help, of course, almost hand over graduates to companies who are in dire need. So we have people working for the last 3 graduates that I remember that are on this list is like one student went to Sierra Nevada, which is a military contractor working in cybersecurity. We have a student who works as data analyst for Future Fuel, which is a chemical company. Right. We have a couple of students who work for big bad boy mowers. One is a data analyst, one is an IT guy. And so it's both small, close companies, companies as far away. We have one graduate who works for Riot Games, which probably people know.
Yeah.
And so what he does actually is data engineering. So he's interested in looking at the data that they get from players and then working them to the level that the company can say, what should we do next? What kind of game should we develop next? What are the numbers? So it's basically is a very rich field. We have also connections with alumni. There's a surprising number of data science alumni who didn't ever study that, but they ended up in fields like that. They work as data analysts for enterprise, for the FBI, for construction companies.
Well, the alum that works at Enterprise, that he was a student. He was a student here. He was a music student.
Yes.
Oh wow.
And his first career was
he was an
pipe organist,
organ builder, and organ repairman. Yeah.
Yeah.
For 10 years.
Yeah. Very. You talked very specialized. You know that if you have a pipe organ, he'll come, and then he migrated over to data science.
Yes. Now there is I have not talked to him about this, but there's obviously a deep connection between music and math. And so anybody who gets into music, not just on the playing or the singing way, but who looks at the actual music and how it's made,
right,
has to learn some math. There are deep patterns there.
The way they read.
In fact, I mean, if you listen to music and you ask people, why you like this, why don't you like it? The predictive stuff is based on pattern, where people identify there's a certain thing that sounds like that and something not like that. Do you like that? Yeah, then let's do more of that. Yeah, and so
exactly.
So these are pattern sciences. That's another way. Besides, if you don't like the math and the numbers and you don't care about decisions, the third thing you might care about is patterns, finding patterns. That's actually my favorite.
Let's talk AI.
You've been waiting on that one.
Yeah, we've been waiting.
How does the audience even know that I am not an AI? Did you even make any effort to prove to them that I'm here? Or is this maybe a very smart?
We're going to leave that up for suspense. Okay. A few things. I was just looking up that 1 in 4 venture capital dollars now are based on AI focused companies. IBM, which is now fashioning itself as more a data and consulting firm, is saying
they also built quantum computers.
Well, and they're saying 8,000 workers are going to be displaced through artificial intelligence. McKinsey, major management consulting firm, says about a third of U.S. worker hours will be automated using some form of AI. Even Hollywood is saying that, like for animation, like you think Pixar, Disney, that they're looking at 90% of the voiceovers.
Yeah,
well, and that was the last strike, was to just go over and the one I found real wrong word, comical, but interesting, that even CEOs are saying that there's like almost half that somewhere in the future that their job could be automated in some form or fashion. So with, the use of AI. So all that being said, kind of what's your perspective now in terms of how you see AI, now and in the future?
I mean, you mentioned quite a few applications. The name is, and you said automation, the name is kind of unfortunate, AI. I mean, there's a big debate how intelligent, in terms which we used to define in terms of human intelligence, are these applications. And most people probably would agree not very much, but some very vocal, smart, and informed people think, no, this is the beginning of new intelligence that was completely going to replace us. If that were true, then of course it is game over for us.
That's sentient. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if that's true, then commercial interests, from commercial to environmental interests. There's a whole spectrum of people who might want to replace or substitute humans who are not really just working very well.
Right.
Because most of the time we don't work very well. You know? Then some of the time we work really well, and that's where we beat the machines.
Mm-hmm.
So your question was, where's all this going?
Yeah.
Some people say we're already over in terms of this. So anyway, the name is really unfortunate. The technical name for these models, they sometimes call them generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
That those are the ones who kick off this venture capital thing, because
Right.
it's not like suddenly there's a bigger inflow of money into robotics.
Right.
That's kind of a stable game.
Right.
There's not like there's a bigger inflow. Actually, in anything that is not directly language or
Right.
document related, and that those models, they're called large language models.
Right.
They are the ones everybody is so excited about.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, how many things you can do with language? I mean, don't they have this saying? Don't listen to what somebody says. Look at what he does.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that kind of indicates the low importance of language when it comes to getting stuff done.
Yeah.
So I'm, as you can hear probably, well, I'm very excited about the technology,
Right.
and really, and we train people in that. And I just finished an AI seminar with the students who are also very excited about it. But as we go along, you realize how undeveloped this technology still is, that we have a very long way to go, even if you don't talk about intelligence. And then many of these predictions, I think, are at least, they're not unfounded as a trend,
Right.
but the slope of the trend, the gradient, how quickly we get there is, I think, as unfounded as assuming that, most of the hard work in the world is going to be replaced. It won't be, because the
Yeah.
robots don't have the ability to do that. They still can't stand on one leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People can
Yeah.
do amazing things on one leg. People,
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
machines. Sorry, is that too flippant an answer?
Yeah. Oh, not at all.
I mean, I
And-
could put
and-
some.
And I'm struggling in terms of how we can teach AI,
Yes.
here at Lime, because give a quick story that I in my digital marketing class,
Yeah.
I had an opportunity through HubSpot for students to get an AI accreditation,
Yeah.
and to get a micro internship in working with a company using AI tools to help create like basically an email marketing program. And I talked to some of the faculty, and it was, it was like, it's just because the only thing
They didn't
they-
like it.
well, yeah, because AI translates to just that it's an effective tool to plagiarize and cheat, and
It hallucinates, which is all
yeah.
true. Yeah.
and so we're kind of missing the value, because our students, that's going to be their future.
That's for
and
sure.
they
Sure. That's
and
for
so
sure.
then it's like, how do we incorporate that now into our instruction, into our curriculum? I don't know. I'd love to kind of
Well,
get your thoughts.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit
Yeah,
offline as
yeah.
well, but it's obviously different for your topic of teaching, which is, than for mine. I mean, in my area, it's relatively simple. A lot of the teaching revolves around coding and
Mhm.
programming and using those tools, and so the students will use them. So my job as a teacher is to know much better how to use them and to
Right.
let them use them and comment on their use, and ask the students to lay it open how they use them, and then point out, which you can do at every corner, how as a human you could improve on that.
Right.
I mean, the model, I suppose, if you wanted a concept for that, is augmented. So you allow the human to augment its performance with the AI.
Right.
I think, as you said, that is completely. There's no doubt that that's going to happen more and more. The danger, and that's probably what many of those people are concerned about, is that it's not like ChatGPT, which you have to still switch on and know, I want to talk to an AI. It's the fact that it's embedded in so many things. Like you asked a question about TikTok, it's completely embedded there. There's no information about it, and that is something that you can only quote unquote beat or know if you get specific training in it. So I think I've actually just yesterday was the Mac survey, and I've said, I've offered a whole bunch of different workshops, digital literacy workshops, AI literacy workshops, where I think the students should have little workshops where they learn about these things. And computer students like Gavin and others would help with that as well.
Right.
I think that's what we should do.
Absolutely.
Of course, not as a mandatory thing. Nobody else should have forced to do it. Just like if somebody doesn't want to, participate in a certain movement, they can switch their phone off. They don't. You can actually live without much of the infrastructure. But if you want to prepare, then you need knowledge.
Going back to earlier, you were at the forefront of web. Now here we are at basically the ChatGPT's OpenAI is 1 year old, so it's very, very new.
Yes.
Kind of where do you see this going? Because I know there's so much concern that the Europeans are looking at how to regulate this. The whole blow up with OpenAI, they frankly dispensed with the pretense that it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
They've now said, okay, we're going to be a for-profit enterprise. It's amazing what $10 billion from Microsoft will do. Yeah. And so now it's okay, this is going to be for commercial purposes. That can go several ways. And some of those are not very good. And I mean, what are your thoughts as far as how do we kind of manage this so that it doesn't destroy our future?
You mean as a society?
Yes.
Well, the regulation thing that might backfire, because unlike what Jason talked about, the raw data protection, well, I mean, you could regulate it and monitor everything that happens. And what the people who are against it say, I'm just going to give both sides, they say this is going to slow it down massively. And it's going to leave some people who have deep pockets who can fend off lawsuits in the advantage. So, if you want this field to grow up, you need to go back to the hippie tenet and say, let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Yeah.
But you cannot let 1,000 flowers bloom if you tell everybody exactly what to do. That's not the way it works. So it's between those two situations. Do you want it safe, but much slower?
Yeah.
Or do you want it fast, evolving fast with a lot of diversity, but largely unregulated? Now, you described, in the global situation with so many countries having different, I think AI regulation worldwide is about as hopeful as the green revolution worldwide. It's also not really working out all that well. So to get all these players under one hat, that I find it hard to believe.
Right.
So my and not only because I came to the US, but my view is largely local. I think I wouldn't call it libertarian because that's obviously another word which I don't really understand. Americans do understand it, but what I mean by that is that you need to worry about your own soul and about your own knowledge in the first place. You cannot wait for. You need to obey the law, obviously, and look out, especially if you are in that field, what are the latest developments. But mostly you need to be worried about your own knowledge. Yeah. And then, of course, once you work with companies, you need to pick your companies well, and your partners, just like you need to pick your friends well. When you want to become an adult, you look at whom am I having lunch with, whom am I having a beer with, and who am I not going to have a beer with, And I'm not having any beers anyway because I'm.
There you go.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, this is PG rated, but
is it really?
Yes, it is.
I think we've done pretty well.
You're ready to throw some profanities
out.
No,
I tell you, when I came from Europe, I mean, those students fortunately have all graduated.
Yeah.
But when I came from Europe, I was I went to school in London. The Brits are terrible. I was cussing left, right, and center. And the faces of the students taught me very quickly that this is not on. And so I've seen the light.
Yeah.
And now I'm really quite happy.
Yeah.
Not doing it. So I will not be profane in this show. No, I will.
Because you look at, like where AI is now and where it's going to be. I mean, look back at like the web with like Section 230 here in the US that what happened was the some of the guidelines weren't there, that all of a sudden what people found is it's an incredible tool to spread misinformation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And now you almost turbocharge
Yeah.
that with AI.
Yeah.
You know, it just
Anybody who they can now make themselves sound not like idiots, but like really smart, because you just have to tell ChatGPT, make it sound really smart. No, make it sound like Birkenkra talks, or like make it sound like Pat Lynch talks, and you'll get that to an approximation. Now, my answer to that would be, well, I don't deny the sort of the accusation against the technology or the reality of misinformation, but I would say that one of the difference between machines and humans is that we have a sense for BS. And I don't mean Bachelor of Science.
Right.
We have a third sense, right? I mean, given a minimum of information, or as much as a look in the eye of somebody, we are able to understand and draw the conclusion, this is authentic, this is true, or this is not true.
Yeah.
And so, I think that or put differently, put in a simpler way, I don't think these systems are really going to fool those who don't want to be fooled.
All right.
Yeah, that would be my view. At the same time, and especially coming from Germany, with the history of Nazism and the Holocaust and all of that behind, Germans, Europeans in general, are very, very sensitive towards misinformation.
Right.
We have massive laws against people who just think, they can say anything. Right. Yeah? And we have done really well with those. It's turned into a really civilized society. So that's the caveat. I'm not saying that people will always know about what's right and wrong. I'm just saying that when push comes to shove, we may not be completely at the mercy of these machines. Just like now, when I ask a student, is this right or wrong? When they say, oh yeah, I believe that, and I ask, did you check? And they say, no, I didn't check. And I said, do you care? And I said, no, I don't care. But if I ask, is this true or right? Yes, this is true. Did you check? Yes, I checked. And why? Because he or she cared and did the research. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So misinformation is another convenience thing. It's for people who don't really care, and maybe who shouldn't care. But those people who care will have to do the detective work, and they always had to. You could never just believe somebody that what they said was true. So.
Anything? Question?
Yes.
Gavin is looking at his notes.
We went on a really serious note,
Yeah.
but
I
want to rewind.
Lighten it up.
It's Pat's fault.
I'm a serious
Blame it
guy.
on Pat.
No dad jokes, no.
But
oh, there you go. Yeah.
But with AI, I believe me myself, I'm in like a sort of problem with myself. Like I'm stuck in the new generation and the old generation. So news came out, I think it was earlier this year, that the actor who played Darth Vader sold his voice to AI.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Like, do you think that us being able to use Darth Vader over and over again, new movies, new skits, do you feel like we're not letting his legacy live on?
That is not less serious than what he said, because you could consider that misinformation. Because people who hear Darth Vader's AI voice will think it's the real Darth Vader. That's really misinformation. Really, they should be taught or told this is not the real guy. And for singers, it's probably even more relevant. Now, in our AI seminar, we had exactly that discussion, not about Darth Vader, but about songs. People love a singer, but he or she does not sing anymore. But I want to hear more songs. I want to hear your songs. Now, guess what happens? And this is like the BS topic I was talking about earlier. Yes, the AI can create totally convincing songs. I heard a Johnny Cash song. But if you look at the words and the music, wow. You need to be a really hardcore fan who really doesn't care what he or she hears in order to accept that as the real deal. So this comes back to, and this may change, but this comes back to the fact that it is still possible for some discerning voice, especially a fan, to distinguish the real article from the false article. So this is a good example for what I just said. Now, only people who don't care, like, no, I want to hear Darth Vader. I want to hear Johnny Cash no matter what. I love Johnny Cash. I've listened to every one of his songs for 1 million times. I want to hear a new song. and it can give it to you. But will this person, in the middle of the night, sort of wake up and think, this wonderful Johnny Cash song? No, I think they put the AI material to one side, and the real D, the real Patrick Lynch, the real Marcus, the real Gavin on the other side.
Yeah,
that's how you know I'm not an AI.
Well, and in that example, James Earl Jones, his family, they gave permission to use it. The scary thing is when all of a sudden now
I know
a studio just decides, okay, that we're going to go create our own material, because Drake, didn't they do that with a Drake song? Was AI generated?
That's the one. Yeah.
And he had nothing to do with it, and then it's like,
and they could put words in his mouth that he would never sing.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden,
that is misinformation.
You've lost, all the artists have lost their intellectual property to the and the machines have started to take.
What really?
Lucasfilm, Disney actually used AI software to assist with somebody who kind of sounded like Carrie Fisher to voice over in Rogue One in 2016. So AI was.
But she was dead.
She was dead by that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, what I think is that there is for humans, there is maybe for machines too. I think you probably write a program to do that, but there is a discernible quality difference. Yeah, and if you only went one reason why that is so, for the studio to do the AI is of course a lot cheaper. A lot fewer, much fewer people look at this AI product, at the writing, at everything, than when you have real people involved. So already as a consequence of that, the quality of anything people are involved is disgustingly difficult and takes long, and they do everything wrong, and you have to pay them so much money. But the quality is human quality. The AI is going to be all cheap, all free, and it's going to be like toys from China.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
they break.
Since I've been the serious one in this conversation, let's get back to serious. No, question on coding and learning to code. Yes. How is that going to change in a world of AI?
But I have a poster all over campus which says anyone can code. And so that's going to change a lot, though. And there's a worrying side to it, and then there's a positive side to it.
Right.
And then there's a neutral side to it. The neutral side is that people who love coding, who have become experts at it, will augment their coding with AI and make it even more effective and faster. The not so good side of the story is that a lot of people will be coaxed into believing they are great coders, but actually it's the AI who does the coding. And as soon as they have a real problem and the AI doesn't know what to do anymore, which happens really quickly at a very small code depth and problem complexity, they are out of their depth. And the problem is that they think they can code, but they can't.
Right.
And the dangerous part of that is that as a lot of software is security, not just there's the misinformation bit, like, the protection of truth part, but there's also, protecting airplanes in the sky, utilities, electricity, all those things. They're all run on software. And the fact that they run is based on human maintainers, basically. Right. So if you increasingly replace those human maintainers by AI, the world may be in for some harsh surprises. So that's what I'm a little worried about. But most of the AI will be used in areas when nobody kind of cares except the consumers, which is web development and stuff like that.
Sure.
If a website goes down or not, that's not a tragedy.
Yeah. Well, and building building new web pages and everything that, I've even seen, in my time, how much easier it is where it used to be. So,
I mean, low code and no code used to be a thing even before ChatGPT.
Yes.
And I would have said exactly the same thing then. So if you care about it, I mean, to every student, I don't quite understand why at Line or most other universities, everybody is not forced to at least take one, low-level coding course to basically understand the language. It's a little bit like you let people loose in a society where everybody speaks a particular language, everybody who is, does important things, but you don't care if they even know the alphabet. Right. And so giving some basic training, I think, would be really, really useful.
Do you think that they could kind of rework it as like lower level coding classes could be kind sort of? Like, you know how you're required to pick like
I think that would be totally.
That's
Yeah. I cannot speak for the people who currently teach the language classes because they would probably have a word to say about that. But
we just
Yeah.
had James Martell
Yeah.
on Mondays.
yeah, I mean, they. Honestly, actually, my instinctive answer would be, well, I think administratively that would be great, and then as a result, everybody would do that maybe, or many people would. I don't think it's really very fair, not just to the language students, but natural language, which is what we're talking about, is so much more fun and so much more difficult than computer language. There's no comparison whatsoever. The reason why ChatGPT is so good at coding assistance is because programming languages are so terribly primitive. You know, they have to be primitive because the machines that run them are primitive. And so that is not true for natural language, so for spoken language. So I don't think they're equivalent.
No.
And because they're not in principle equivalent, I don't think that would work as much as I would like the idea.
Do we at Lion? Do we mention cybersecurity? Do you teach anything?
Cybersecurity is a huge data science growth area.
Yes.
Even though it's not in the title, but actually what it relies on is making sense, not in the story sense, but certainly in terms of visualization, in terms of monitoring of huge amounts of data that are growing all the time. Namely, when an attack happens or when no attack happens, to find out what is there a pattern of attack. That's kind of the core of cybersecurity. And many students have asked for that. So I'm now developing a course for the summer for cybersecurity with a certificate. And I would actually like to turn that, as well as the programming, into a micro-credential thing. So there's an idea at Lion pushed by the provost and a few professors who have worked on that for a bunch of years to actually turn some of the courses into micro-credentials. So students who don't want to take a whole course or degree can take that skill, but also people from outside the college could do that. And I would love that, because it would fill up the classes also with people who have, real problems, not just student problems, real problems outside in the
Real
world.
life, yeah.
Real life problems. I mean, student problems are real life problems, but our world is kind of a protected little bubble in some areas.
Well, what are you going to be teaching
in spring?
In the spring, I
look at the posters.
I see them every day.
Yeah, because you see them every day. Radek
Shulga
Shulga stopped me a few days ago and said, "You know what I'm going to do next year? I'm going to make a poster that everybody will look at because it says not from Markus Birkenkrahe."
Yeah.
And I thought it was both a little mean but also accurate. So I'm sorry for the posters. Now all the art on the posters is all generative AI.
Radek was using my account to create. He sent me some posters, so watch out.
Oh, there you go. So
he's fully armed. Yeah,
yeah, I know. They're just sucking me dry. Yeah. No, anyway, so I'm teaching Introduction to Programming in C++, which is not so much an AI language, but very much for games, particularly for games, but for anything also that's industry relevant. Spacecraft, anything that has a sort of a hard metal edge, but also needs to do something, needs C++ and games. So I'm teaching that. And I'm teaching databases, which is the SQL thing I talked about earlier. So, making sense of data in tables, basically. And I'm teaching operating systems. Windows is an example. Linux is an example for operating systems. And I'm a very great friend of open source software.
Right.
I don't like Windows all that much. I like Linux a lot because it's all open and you can actually do a lot of stuff with it. So as a result, we're going to do this. All course is going to be about Linux.
Right.
And what else am I doing? There's something else. I know it. Oh yeah, and I'm doing an advanced introduction to advanced data science, which is the second course in a line, but people can get a waiver for the first course if they want to do it. And for the first time, I'm going to do it in Python as well as R. So I've got different languages. So the top languages in data science that you need to watch out for are Python, R, and SQL.
With the HATS competition, the students that were doing the robotics, what programming?
My group should have won, but they didn't. I don't know what happened. Did your group win?
Are you an election denier? Or is that
now it's getting
serious
rigged,
again.
No. I was sorry to hear that they didn't win.
Yes, yeah.
And I wish they had, but the robots, you mean?
Yeah, what programming programming language was used.
Yes, that was another type of language. All these languages are completely interchangeable. Yeah. So if you have a program in Python, you can turn it program in R into you cannot turn it in program in SQL because that's slightly different. But this language was a block-based visual language. So people know that from Scratch, which is a language that kids often learn, where you have all the commands in blocks and you can drag and drop them into a program. And yeah, but while that sounds just like fun, is actually you can do everything in that language. And so we did program some games, but we also used it to program some robots that we didn't build, but that were fun to use because they have a lot of sensors and they can do everything but fly. So the students were, and this was fun because I didn't know in how little time I could get the students to do so much. And so I was very, very impressed with that incoming group.
It was
what they did.
Yeah. No, it was.
I mean, we only had 50 minutes a week, and many of those classes didn't happen for various reasons, holidays and so on. The Americans, I mean, in Europe, everybody says, "Oh, Americans, they work all day, all week. They have no holidays, nothing whatsoever." And I don't think I've ever had as many holidays. So there's some rumors going around between on either side of the Atlantic. Not everything is true that you hear.
Oh, I think that's a great words to close this this interview.
Actually, no, the great ways to close, I wrote them down, are from St. Nicholas. Because today is
Fire away.
6th of December. And he said the greatest gift you can give someone is your time and attention.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Dr. Marcus Birkenkraw, thank you very much. And thank everyone for listening to the Career Pathways podcast. As always, we'll be coming every week with a new and fascinating guest. Always people ask, where can you find the Career Pathways podcast? From way, way, way in the distant, producer Jason, where can they find it?
They can find it on every single platform. If you want to watch it video-based, we have YouTube. If you want it audio-based, it's on pretty much every single platform that you can use for podcasts on, except for Pandora. So we are 99.97% of platforms, so it's about as much as bacteria that's killed on pyramids.
And there you have it.
Hold on, this is on video as well?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're going to be a star.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So
I should have dressed up.
You did. You went full Arkansas.
I went Arkansas.
Yes.
Please note that.
All right. Well, it's Pat Lynch saying goodbye.
Gavin Brunson.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcus.
You're well welcome.
This broadcast is sponsored in part by Lyon College and by Kilt Studios.